So, John, if you maybe want to kick it off whenever you're ready, no rush. But
All right, let's call this meeting as Cpdc to order.
great.
And Andrew, if we can do the honors to lay the ground rules here.
You got it. So, thank you all for joining us tonight for the Cpdc meeting of Monday, June 10th, 2024. As you can tell, it's a hybrid meeting. We have participants both in the audience here and over the Zoom. We'll manage this in the standard fashion in that the CPDC will be looking for applicants to present their application, discuss among the board members, comment and question themselves, and then open it up to the public comment. If you do have public comment, for those in the audience, please raise your hand and we'll look to acknowledge you and you'll have to come up. Those on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature found under reactions, or if your camera is on, please wave your hand and we're happy to find you then. For those that are making their first public comment, please introduce yourself, your name and your address for the record and the minute keeping. And other than that, I guess I can introduce ourselves. So I'm Andrew McNichol, Community Development Director for the town of Reading. To my right is our senior planner, Olivia Knightley, who started just last week, so please welcome her. On the board tonight, in person, we have Vice Chair Tony Diarezzo and Member Heather Klisch, and over the Zoom, we do have Chair John Weston and Member Hillary Mateve as well. So that will recall voting one at a time, as you know. In addition, I just want to introduce as well Assistant Town Manager Jane Wellman in the audience and Town Manager Matt Cronalis over the Zoom. They're here listening in. But otherwise, I think we can go ahead and get started, John. Oh, actually, one last piece. This meeting is being broadcasted and recorded by RCTV and will be posted to their local channels after the meeting. Oh, and also I see Select Board Member Karen Herrick here. Thank you for joining us. I think we are now good to get started, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, but your video seems to be frozen.
Yeah, something's really going weird. I'm gonna log off and log back in. But maybe we can start the first agenda item.
Sure thing.
Mr. Chairman, can we take something a bit out of order tonight, please?
Sure, what's that?
While you're rebooting, I believe the Assistant Town Manager is here tonight. And you wanted to introduce yourself?
While you're rebooting.
Sure. All right, I'll see you in a minute.
That's good.
Thank you. I just wanted to come before you. I introduced myself to the folks in person just to say hello. I was previously the Director of Operations in town. I worked on the through administrative services. I've been with the town of Reading for 8 years. Other relevant experience is as a select board member and a school committee member and the moderator in another community. So I have about 15 years of elected service as well in municipal government. So that kind of helps inform my decision making, and I understand the roles of our elected and appointed leaders. So I'm just here, I'm excited to support Andrew and welcome Olivia. Our planning department has been really running pretty thin, and Andrew has really stepped up and been such a key part of our town staff. So hopefully we'll be able to give him a lot more support and in turn our boards. And so I'm here to help you. You can reach me anytime you want. I'll make sure that Andrew gives you my phone number and it's on the town website. And you can email me in any way that I'm here to help the boards and likewise our residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Tony, perhaps as you're still running as the vice chair of this meeting, perhaps we can take another item out of order.
All right.
For the approval not required plan for 1310 Main Street.
All right. So moved.
Great. So just to start, I can pull up the plan on screen, but this is a pretty straightforward what we call an A&R plan, approval not required process, because really what it is a division of a tract of land that is fronting an existing public way. So all of the lots proposed on the plan meet the minimum frontage and zoning area requirements for the district that it is in. Thus, all of the lots are deemed buildable lots in that sense, in terms of the zoning allowances only, but it's really a subdivision application that does not require a public hearing process because that right of way for the frontage and access exists. So this is the 1310 Main Street site. It's up by the recently finished Reading Animal Clinic, and it's a division into 3 lots, 3 single lots, all of which front Main Street. Lot 3 has a bit of frontage on Franklin Street, but the engineer Jack Sullivan is here. If you had anything else to add, Jack, there is wetlands and vernal pools present on the site, but in terms of the A&R process, we're concerned about the subdivision.
Yep, I think Andrew covered it pretty well. We're in the S20 zoning district, minimum lot size 20,000 square feet, minimum lot frontage 120 feet. All 3 lots exceed this. Lot 2, there's an existing number 1310 Main Street. That's where the existing home for this lot resides. So lot 2 will be where the existing house is. Lot 1 will be a buildable lot. Lot 3 will be a buildable lot. We've done some extensive wetland delineation and work with the Conservation Commission on this. But like Andrew said, right now this is just a development into 3 A&R lots. And I wanted to welcome Olivia to the town as well. And if there's any questions from CPDC, I'll gladly try to answer them. The attorney for this project's available on Zoom as well, in case there's any legal questions. Brad Ford.
Jack, how many lots is this? Just 3, correct?
Just 3.
I see lot 1 listed, I see lot 2 listed, I see a house, but that's not on lot 3. Is that the house
Correct.
you're referring to as the existing house?
Yeah, the existing house is on lot 2.
Okay,
Yeah, Andrew's on it there.
All
So
right.
there it is there. And then lot 3 will be the large undeveloped parcel, but it's a buildable lot. We'll be looking to come in with some applications, either a subdivision or some sort of development plan for lot 3. And we left in access and utility easement so they can gain access to that house through lot 3.
okay,
There's an existing driveway there now with utilities, so I just basically formalized that into an easement.
thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, how many votes do we need and who needs to sign?
You would just need a simple majority, so 3 votes. It's a motion to endorse actually, and then the 2 here can sign tonight. I'll collect the rest of the signatures.
So I'd be looking for a motion to endorse the A&R for 1310 Main Street.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Gotta do roll call.
Thank you. Roll call vote. You asked me to remember people's names, I'm not good at that.
It would be Tony, Heather, and Hillary. John, I think, will abstain,
Yeah.
is my assumption. That he just logged on.
Hillary?
Yes.
Heather? Tony? Yes. Vote me.
John will abstain.
John will abstain. Oh,
Thank you.
I see you're back, thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, I'll wrap that up. I have the Mylars. We can sign them at the end of the day.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, John, if you're back, I suppose we can just roll forward with the agenda and tackle the official first item.
Sure. For a continued public hearing, definitive subdivision application at 0 Harold Ave.
Great. We do not need to read the legal notice because this is a continuance, so I'm going to pull the plans up on screen. We introduced Jack Sullivan, engineer for this project as well, and give us a status update as to where they've been, what they've been working towards with staff, and maybe what they're seeking tonight.
Sure. For the record, my name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. I live at 25 Clover Circle in Reading. In the audience with me tonight is Eric Jones, the developer, on the Zoom meeting, we have two attorneys, Len Joseph and Chris Alpine, are available by Zoom. So just to bring the members up to speed on this development, this is a little over 4-acre parcel at the end of Harold Avenue, which is off of Van Noren Road. It's a 30-foot wide private way. There's a little over 78 feet of frontage on Harold Avenue. And we've been exploring some different development scenarios with this property, and I'll let you know why we decided on the one we chose to bring before you tonight. We had looked at doing originally a 2-lot subdivision on this property, create a right-of-way so we can create frontage, and then have 2 buildable lots. In doing that, when we met with the fire chief, we had a few DRT meetings over the years. But then we met with the fire chief because we really didn't want to build a full-out cul-de-sac. It's a lot of pavement. We'd be cutting down a lot of trees. Then you have curb lines, you would need street lights, you need fire hydrants, a whole bunch of reasons. So we met with the fire chief saying, okay, if we do 2 lots, could we sprinkler the homes? Do you really need a full cul-de-sac? He said, yes, I do. If you do 2 lots, I need a full cul-de-sac. If you do a single lot, then we do not need a cul-de-sac. You do not, there's a hydrant right at the end of Harold Ave, so he was satisfied with that. So that led us in the direction of, let's look to do 1 single-family house lot. By doing that on a 4-acre site, we're only cutting down 11 trees that are greater than 6 inches in diameter. So we're retaining a lot of the tree cover. The driveway would be more fitting with Harold Avenue. It's a neighborhood of single-family homes with driveways. This would be a 14-foot wide paved driveway to get to a house out back. The look from Harold Ave would be much the look today, except there'd be a 14-foot wide paved driveway. But in order to build it this way, we'd require some waivers from the Cpdc. You've had a few of these come before you in the last few years. I was one of the first who came up with the idea of a proof plan on a project on Grove Street, and if you can demonstrate that you could do a subdivision by right, then the planning board, if you can make a case for the waivers, they generally support them to reduce pavement widths, reduce the amount of drainage, reduce the amount of tree cover to be removed. So in this case, as I stated in my opening, we have a little over 78 feet of frontage on Harold Avenue, 4-acre site. So with the proof plan, if we go to that, Andrew, the last sheet, I need to demonstrate that I can get a 60-foot right-of-way with a fully compliant radius of 60 feet cul-de-sac that Andrew is showing there. The challenge with this site is typically you'd like to see 2 30-foot roundings and a 60-foot right-of-way. So if you think about it, you basically need 120 feet of frontage. So, but that's, the way I look at this is we're basically extending Harold Avenue. So if this was like Main Street and you were gonna have a new subdivision come off of Main Street, the roundings is somewhat critical for sight distance, for safety. In this case, we're basically extending Harold Avenue, and on paper, we're extending it. I should state that, we're extending on paper. And so I don't see the full 30-foot roundings being as important. I did meet with Andrew this afternoon and Ryan Percival, the town engineer. I had received a memo saying that they felt it didn't meet the proof, and we talked through it, and I could see their reasoning. They say you don't have the 30-foot roundings, you know, and I said, no, I don't. I'm not able to do that on this site. But what I have been able to do is extend the road in, knowing I don't have the 30-foot roundings, but doing so that my center line radius is the minimum 100 feet. I have the cul-de-sac defined with the 60-foot radius. I do have the 30-foot rounding into the cul-de-sac. So Andrew, myself, and Ryan said, why don't we bring this to CPDC, have some discussion on it. assuming we get by the proof, then there'd be other waivers we need. We're not looking to construct a road. We're not looking to put in curbing. We're not looking to put in streetlights. And as I stated in my opening, the reasons for that is there's some sloping topography on this site, some large trees, and we're going to try to protect all those natural features, and then just tuck in a single-family home. Even my drainage design for this project, it would involve low-impact drainage, a rain garden, items working with the natural site itself. And we'd have a water service, and we'd have town sewage to this site as well. But the first step, and the reason we wanted to meet tonight, is we do require some discussion on the proof plan, and then if we could get into the waivers, assuming everyone's okay with the proof plan. So I think I'll turn it back to CPDC for any questions you might have, and we can have some back and forth on it.
Anybody online want to comment to start?
Thank you, Andrew. So I guess the way that I see the proof plan is, right, has two functions, right? The first is really to confirm that the parcel that you're looking to work with, that you have the rights, like it's big enough, and that you have the rights to do that. And Jack, right, as we've discussed on other applications, right, there's a difference between like what you're going to build, and then in having the right to even have that conversation. And so I guess in this context, right, like the question is not the design per se, and I agree, at least on one side of the roadway, that that there's a rationale there, but I guess I'm not all that convinced that this shows that the property owner has the right. Even on the issue that I have is, right, on the, and I don't know which direction I'm looking at here, but on the I guess the east side of the property right of way there, right? Is that even like a reverse curve in the wrong way, or is that an optical illusion?
It's a compound curve.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, John, in the original proof plan, there was some concern that you need a 75-foot separation between reverse curves. I didn't have that in the original proof. So with this, I was able to do it with two compound curves and eliminate the verbiage with a 75-foot tangent between two reverse curves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, just to piggyback on what you're saying, the real challenge from a designer in this case, we're dealing with a 30-foot wide right-of-way. Harold Ave's a 30-foot wide right-of-way. And then I'm trying to prove out on a 60-foot right-of-way. So that's a bit of a challenge as well.
And I guess that's why I started, like, to me, this, of course, it's a geometric issue, so it's a designer issue, but it's really more of a legal issue. The way that I see it, it's like, do you have the right? If you can't lay it out according to the parameters, right, does the property owner have the right?
So for waivers,
I'm not so sure that we've ever given some sort of waiver on the proof plan, right? Like, I don't even know whether you could.
I agree. I tend to lean that historically we've never waived a proof requirement that hasn't been met, at least in my recent memory. but the language does say that you can waive, really with the intent in finding that the plan design is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the regulations. So we've used the full regulations in vein of what you said earlier, that the lot is of size and able to fit development. But the regulation is a bit more homage to that inconsistency with intent and purpose. So they're local regs which are in your authority. So the CPDC can act how they see fit, and right, I think staff have pushed strongly on the historical trend of proof plans and how we've used them in the past. But I do hear the applicant and the challenges with this plan, so we agreed that bringing to CPDC to gain your thoughts on waiving of what isn't met, and how plausible that is, let alone the actual, the other waivers in terms of the design they wish to build, but that's where our thoughts have lied to date.
So I think that would get back if the board members feel the proof plan isn't working, it doesn't meet what we typically see. Then when I talked to Andrew and Ryan today, I said then to my waiver request, I could look to waive those 30-foot roundings. We'd still have, you know, the 60-foot layout coming in on paper. But for one lot, I think we could make a justification on why those waivers could be supported by this board. But that would be, we'd have some discussion and we'd have to talk through it.
See, I'm with John on this. The reality is what you really want is a variance to say that you don't need the frontage required. It's one lot today. The only reason you're even subdividing it is so you can actually build on that lot. I'm assuming that you either have not, the applicant has either not applied for variance or feel they won't get it, and this just seems to be a way around that, which means that it really, if you don't meet the proof plan, it's a way around getting the frontage taken care of.
And Tony's right, we could apply to the zoning board. I've been in front of them a lot. This parcel of land, it's not a secret, was subdivided out. It used to be all number 116 Van Norden Road. I forget when I broke that out, it might have been 8 or 10 years ago, and this back piece was created. So, you know, you have to prove a hardship, as you know, Tony, through ZBA. Yeah. So I'm not, the ZBA is pretty tough if you don't have enough frontage in getting a variance. So it really wasn't a workaround. I just felt the ZBA proving a hardship would be tough. We could try that as an avenue. So this was another avenue to take.
Yeah, I think we're just pushing it a little too far at this point, where we've said that if you can show us a proof plan, it'll work, and we will work with you to say, well, you can do it anyhow, let's do the best that we can. Mm-hmm. But here, it's a case of you can't even show us the proof plan, so I think we're just pushing it just a little too far.
I'll chime in. I'm briefly, because I'm of the same mind that there are good reasons to have a proof plan, right? And I'm at a loss for criteria by which we might say waive the proof plan or waive the 30-foot requirements if the history is such that the proof plan is kind of a necessary piece to prove that you can do it, you've got the right to do it, and then we maybe make a better plan from there. I'm at a real loss for how to say why now and not other times.
Any other thoughts on this? And I guess I'll chime in there, Heather. I guess that was my thought also, is like, you know, what's the justification here versus other places? I'm just not sure. I don't not sure I'd have a good rationale, right, for waiving it in this location.
I also wanted to chime in. I agree on the, variance and the frontage issue not being met. That's part of the reason we have the zoning. So it seems like it would have to go in front of zoning for a variance before we can weigh in as well.
From my side, I've tried a number of options in trying to get this to work. I can take another look at it. I appreciate the feedback from the board. If we could continue, I don't know if members of the public, you may want to see if any members of the public are out there, but
Yeah.
on my side, we'll take another look at this and then see what we want to do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, are there any members, either online or in the room there, that would like to speak on this?
I have one in the room. Yep, if you could please come up and introduce yourself.
My name is Aaron Bornasian. My wife and I have lived on Harold Avenue for, since 1972. I brought some papers with me in case you need to refer to some of the things that I'm going to talk about, some of which I've talked about here before. There is your own rules for subdivision where there's a requirement in paragraph 3.3.2 that any portion of a lot that's not more than 6 feet in elevation above the nearest water body, marsh, bog, swamp, or wetland is to be considered not suitable for erection of a dwelling. Now, I haven't, of course, made a survey. All I have to work with is the lines of elevation on the map that Mr. Sullivan has provided, and it looks to me like the same line runs through the wetland and the house. So that means that it's not 6 feet above. That's number one. I've talked about that before in this room. Second thing is that back in 2016, the Zoning Board of Appeals considered that two-house subdivision and building plan, and they decided and declared in their decision that the lot from here back is not a buildable lot. They call it a non-buildable parcel. That's the terminology they use. So that's the second thing. The third thing, though, is probably even more important. Oh yes, your own board in 2016. Well, here.
Thank you.
I brought extras. This is a plan from 2016. You'll see up in the corner up here, signatures of the Cpdc. And down here, it tells us that it's not a buildable lot. These things are not hard to find. I'm an amateur, and I found them in the Registry of Deeds. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is an order of notice that goes with the deed that split the lot in 2016. This is a 19-page thing. Again, it's in the Registry of Deeds. If you here. Here's another one. If if you turn to, well, they call it page 108. It's at the next to last page. You can read all the boilerplate on your own, but paragraph 17 and paragraph 18 are important here. The owner and all the future owners cannot cut healthy native trees with a diameter at breast height greater than 4 inches between the footprint of the new structure, that's this structure over here, between the new structure and the wetland resource area, which is back there on the left as we look at it. This restriction shall survive the issuance of any certificate of compliance, the deed of conveyance from grantor to the grantee of 116 Van Norden Road shall contain this restriction, and that shall be expressed in covenants in all deeds to succeeding owners. Upon any conveyance, a copy of the deed containing this restriction shall forthwith be submitted to the grantor, by the grantor to the Reading Conservation Commission. Paragraph 18 says this order shall apply to all successors in interest, successors in control, successors in title, in conjunction with the transfer of interest, control, or title of any part of this site. The applicant shall provide the new owner a copy of this order. Where was I? A copy of this order. The new owner shall sign a written acknowledgement that he or she has received the order and agrees to comply with the conditions. Goes on. So has the new owner signed this, received this and signed it?
Can I talk through the chair?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I think that,
Yes.
I believe that document that was provided was for an order of condition that was issued on number 116 Van Norden Road. That's a separate lot.
That,
And then just to follow up, what the other point you made about a non-buildable lot, when back in 2016, when 116 was broken off, this rear portion was created, this 4-acre lot, and it's non-buildable only since we don't have enough frontage. There's 78 feet of frontage, and we need more than that. So that's just a typical note we put on a plan. It doesn't mean it can never be built on ever again. If the zoning board granted a variance, if this board granted approvals, it would become buildable. But at the time of that filing, since we didn't have sufficient frontage, that's a standard note we put on a plan.
well, I don't know, the frontage hasn't changed in the meantime. And also this order of notice went with the deed that split the property into the Lot A in the front and non-buildable parcel A in the back.
So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I do understand, right, there are a number of different constraints on this property. Aside from the issue that we were talking about today. So I think there are some even if the applicant is able to provide a proof plan without requiring a waiver, right? There's other issues to discuss that we have not discussed through tonight because we're not there yet. But if we get to the next step, some of those issues will certainly come up. Thank you.
You'll make up your mind and decide what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll do the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time.
Okay. So we are looking to continue to win.
looks like we'd be looking at Monday, July 15th, if the applicant felt that was enough time to vet and submit materials before then, the holiday.
Why don't we hold July 15th? And if for some reason we need to extend that, I'll talk to you in advance, Andrew. But if we could hold that date, that would be great.
Motion to continue public hearing for definitive subdivision application 0 Harold Ave, also known as 0 Van Norden Road, to Monday, July 15th.
A second.
All right.
Roll call vote. John?
Oh, John seems to lead to it.
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Tony? Yes.
We will be in touch.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, great. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for a major modification to a definitive subdivision plan for Grandview Road extension.
This one, we do need to read the legal notice, which I'm pulling up now. So that it doesn't take correct.
Tony, is that something you can do?
Yeah, I'll do it. Notice is hereby given that pursuant to MGL Chapter 41, Section 81T, Section 6.2.5 of the Reading subdivision regulations and Section 4.5 of the Reading Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Regulations, the Community Planning and Development Commission, Cpdc, will hold a public hearing on Monday, June 10th, 2024 at 7:15 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room at Reading Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Massachusetts, and through the remote and online measures below to consider the major modifications application to a previously approved 4-lot definitive subdivision and stormwater permit submitted by Michael Salamone for land located at 4 Cold Spring Road, Assessors Map 27, Lot 404 in Reading, Massachusetts. A copy of the major modification application and accompanying plans are available to the public at Town Hall and on the town website the Thursday prior to the hearing.
Sir?
Thank you.
So I do believe the applicant's engineer is here and the applicants are here as well. I will pull up the plans. Yes, Gio, you mind kicking us off?
This is Giovanni Federa with Federa Engineering. My camera's not working, so I apologize about that. But I am the product engineer and owner of Federa Engineering. So just to recap what this project has undergone over the past few years, in 2021 we had an approved plan that included a 4-lot subdivision. It would keep 4 Cold Spring Road, the existing house located on the property, and subdivide 3 additional new parcels in the rear by extending Grandview Road with a cul-de-sac at the end. The previously approved plan of 2021 was proposing to build 3 new houses on the 3 new lots. And the roadway at the cul-de-sac elevation was proposed and approved at around elevation 113, and it included a stormwater system that was an underground stormwater system located on lots 2 and 3. A few years later, in 2023, we did present a modified plan of the approved plan, and what that modified plan in 2023, what that included was a regrading of the site. The cul-de-sac was proposed to be lowered by about 2 feet to elevation 111. And the stormwater system was changed to be an open pond rather than an underground stormwater system. In addition to that, those changes, Lot 2 was proposed to be not developed and for developed potentially in the future, where Lot 3 and 4 would be the only developed parcels. And that was approved in 2023. Construction started, the roadway was built, a lot of site work was completed. The stormwater system was installed, catch basins, according to the plan, were installed. So everything was input according to the plan of 2023. The roadway was installed at the cul-de-sac elevation of approximately 111, and the stormwater system, like I said, the pond was installed, but it came to a halt, and the ownership team decided that it might be better to go back to the 2021 plan and install the stormwater system that was approved then, while keeping the roadway as built and as was approved in 2023. So essentially what we're doing, we're combining the two approved plans from 2021 and the approved plan from 2023, and we're joining it. We're keeping the roadway as built from the 2023 plan and the stormwater system that was approved from the 2021 plan. We are still going to be developing lots 3 and 4. Lot 2 will remain for future development, and that's essentially what the major modification of this proposal is for. And the concern of when we started looking into this was, the stormwater infrastructure that was installed, will it still work with the approved plan, stormwater system that was approved? The underground chambers, do the elevations still work? And we looked into it. They do still work. They still have the gravity flow that will still go to the underground systems, and the peak rates of runoff are still working with pre-development and post-development. Another question that rose was, is there added impervious area? Was the curve number changed? Was there more lawn now instead of previously approved in 2021? And so we did remove a few more woods and kind of made larger backyards for lots 3 and 4, and we added lawn. We did also create larger building footprints, so we impervious area was larger, and the curve number did increase. And so what we examined from a stormwater design standpoint was, how is this going to work with the recharge system? And so we previously lot 4, the roof runoff was going to the underground stormwater system, and that was from 2021. So lot 4, instead of redirecting that roof runoff to the recharge system, we gave it its own separate roof drywall system. And so that kind of took away the added impervious area that was previously going to the underground system, and we kind of just left it alone, and that balanced out the peak rates of runoff. So we really examined the runoff, and it all seemed to work. Calculations were good, and the design worked. Everything worked by combining the two approved plans to now bring this plan. And we wanted to discuss it with the commission, see if they had any questions. I'm happy to discuss, but that's the general scope of what we have provided here, and I think that summarizes it. So I'm happy to open it to the commission and to the public, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my first question is really to Andrew. Did we get any feedback from engineering on this?
So we didn't get any formal feedback from them, but all in all, given it was the previously approved design, there were no major concerns with it. The number is calced out, but I guess we'll get to why we didn't get a memo in just a minute. But if we can get some board comments and considerations, happy to discuss next steps if we can.
Sure. anyone from the board have questions or comments?
I've got a couple. You said we did increase impervious, we did move more lawn, fewer trees. Is that you did it on the plan or you did it in actual development?
Alright, so on the plan we did, and yeah, so on the plan we did.
Okay. Originally, there was a discussion about grading onto the town property and some easements. Did you ever get those permissions?
Yes, we did. And that is shown on, I think it was sheet 1 or sheet 2. It was the plan of land. There was a 30-foot wide grading easement that was granted, and we did get those permissions, yeah.
Okay. I assume the shed has been removed?
It will be relocated onto lot 1. That scope of work has not been encountered yet.
All right. Lot 2, where you're still going to assume that whoever develops in the future will be responsible for their own stormwater management?
That is correct.
Okay. The other concern I have is reach R1. You noted in the 100-year storm, there's a slight increase.
Where is this?
I think it's just the asterisks in your table that specific to recharge area 1. On the 100-year storm, there was an increase, but on the overall site, there was a decrease.
That is correct. From jogging my memory. The overall site. So we had 2 discharge points. We had location that was reach R1 and reach R2. Reach R1 is located to the north of the site near the wetlands, and reach R2 is to the west of the site at the town-owned property. And we looked at the overall, so we looked at those 2 points of summaries of the peak rates of runoff. But we did also examine the whole of the property because it is in the same watershed area, and just figured, if you look at the whole overall watershed area, it does, if you get the sum, combine them, it does have a decreased peak rate of runoff from the sum as a whole.
But the 2 areas are not connected, correct?
Excuse me?
The 2 reach 1 and reach 2 are not connected. Reach 1 doesn't flow into reach 2.
It does not. They are separated. But we were looking at the sum of R1 and R2, considering that it's in the same watershed area.
Yeah, but I'm concerned about neighbors. So if you're increasing the flow off the property for reach 1, just because you're decreasing it on the other end doesn't actually help the neighbors.
Yeah, I can discuss that with engineering, with Ryan.
All right, and the last comment I have, and I'm not even certain about this one. So the software you've got is running 2020, and it keeps saying intercompany name here. Have you actually had updates to that software?
Yeah, this software is the latest and greatest. I mean, I understand that we downloaded it, I believe, in 2020, but yeah, the software is totally up to date for sure.
To confirm, this is the NOAA 14 rainfall data.
Yes, it is. I can confirm that.
Do you know if the intercompany name is a setting in the software or if it's a manual update you have to make?
Intercompany name is something I should have just entered for their engineering. That's just kind of, a standard that, That's an easy fix. I mean, I can enter the company name, which is Fidera Engineering. You know,
Okay.
we do own the software, but we just haven't entered the company name.
All right, that's all the comments I had for now. Thank you.
Other comments from the board?
I'm just curious, what prompted the change in the stormwater system to go back to the original version?
The ownership team just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I think they realized afterwards that they wanted to pursue the underground system rather than the above ground system.
Okay,
They figured having a yard for the neighbor, for the future homeowners would be, it would benefit.
and then I wanna make sure I'm understanding, so the roadway that you're building is the roadway as approved in the second approval.
Correct.
Right, and I guess I'm wondering, is there anything, that's my question, is there anything about the roadway that is different from the first version that was approved that went along with the original stormwater system? I'm looking at that's big impervious area. Is there anything else we should consider about the way that drains or anything?
No, so it's the changes of the roadway really have stayed the same. The only difference is that the cul-de-sac lowered by about 2 feet, and so you had all that extra fill. We just lowered the roadway. The shape and how it looks geometrically stayed the same. And what we show here on this plan is the as-built roadway. So the cul-de-sac has been built according to the plan, and it matches exactly where it was supposed to go. Previously in 2021, I think there were 3 catch basins scattered around the cul-de-sac, and they had low points kind of in different areas of the cul-de-sac. But we figured if you just had the stormwater just go straight towards the end of the cul-de-sac, just continue its sheet flow naturally and gradually towards the end and towards the stormwater system, it would make more sense. And so we kept it as it was previously approved in 2023 and as built.
Okay, I kind of remember that discussion, and my only other comment is I would appreciate a review by the town engineer.
Certainly.
So, Andrew, thoughts on, and I guess I feel the same way. I saw the same issue about the reach to, right, that it from a legal standpoint it may be okay, but from an impact standpoint, one side doesn't help the other side. So, and then, just not knowing enough about what the change in elevation of the roadway really does to the flow and the system. Having an engineer review, having the engineering team review would be great.
These are helpful comments to capture. I think there's been some open-ended questions on our end too that we just need to get some further assurances on. So I think this helps even in that conversation as well. So there are members of the public here, I believe, if we want to open to public comment.
Sure, that'd be great.
We have one in.
Hi, I'm Susan Coram. I live at 31 Ridge Road, so I'm one of the abutters. On the slide that's up, I'm the abutter to the left across Cold Spring Road. It looks to me as though the recharge system extends into Lot 2, but I think you said that Lot 2 would need to take care of its own stormwater runoff when it's developed. So where would that go? Would that then go would that extend then across the back of lot 2? And if so, does that even take out more trees and get closer to the wetlands?
So I can answer that.
Sure.
And if you're looking at this plan that's shown right here,
Yep.
you see the clouded area, lot 2 for future development. So that area is clouding the potential location for a house, as well as in the lower left-hand corner, the location for future dry well for lot 2. And it's in a dashed line, it's right there, yep. So that would not be in a location where it's getting any closer to the wetlands. It's outside the 100-foot wetland buffer. It's essentially in the front yard of the house, and it would not extend off of the drainage easement or the shared recharge system. So
Okay, at the moment, that area is higher than where the house would be, right? So would you actually need to be lowering that area to catch the runoff from the new building?
well, you can raise the site so that the grade would be, somewhat level, and essentially what you'd be capturing is the roof runoff. And as long as the roof runoff has downspouts that are leading to the recharge system, and the recharge system can be gravity fed and somewhat lowered into the ground, I can see that it should be able to work. So essentially it'd just be, maybe raising the site just a few feet, just to make sure that the downspouts would have gravity conveyance to the subsurface infiltration, the dry well.
Okay, and then raising the site on lot 2 in the future, would that then impact the full drainage plan that you've got at this point?
No, because that recharge system, that's on lot 2 and 3. You can go as high as about 10 feet over the system. So you have plenty of area that you can, if you really wanted to, you can add fill on top of that system. But not like, developing lot 2, I don't think you would need to fill that much fill to build the house and have gravity conveyance of the downspouts go to the recharge system. So I wouldn't see it being an issue.
Okay. With the work that's been done so far, do you know have any of the neighbors had trouble with any water or flooding, especially to the east, which would be at the top of this slide?
I have not heard of any complaints, so not to my knowledge.
Okay. So I think, and unless I'm mistaken, you said that there would be more of the wooded area taken, more lawn, I believe closer to the wetlands, in the upper left corner on the slide, yeah. So is there, I guess my question is, why would that land that's needed for the recharge system be taken from the wooded area rather than be dealt with by decreasing the footprints of the buildings?
So actually the lawns that were extended were on lots 3 and 4, so they're up gradient of the recharge system and further from the wetlands. And that was really just done to kind of, give a larger lawn to the future homeowner and just have it be more appealing as a home ownership standpoint. So it wasn't within the wetland buffer. It's actually the furthest point from the wetlands. So.
Oh, okay. I thought that the recharge system had gotten a little bigger up in the northeast, to the upper left of the site.
No, it stayed within the same footprint of the previously approved plan from 2021.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this is a kind of separate question, but to the west of the cul-de-sac, which is the bottom of the slide that's shown, the land that you can't see that's below this slide, the land to the west, slopes down. And then we have this newly created roadway that's all of a sudden 5 feet higher than where it had been. So it has really accentuated this situation where all the water is collecting there and standing there. And that seems to raise a few issues, creating a new standing pool of water and mosquitoes and all of that. It seems to me like you'd be a little concerned about like neighborhood kids falling into such a thing. And so I don't know, in that kind of situation, do you need any kind of guardrail or fence or anything? And on the tree and foliage plan, which is a different one, it shows 4 new sugar maples to be planted in that area that has been disturbed. And I can't imagine that that's going to work if that area is now holding water. And I'm guessing that even some of the trees that are shown as existing, that are out of the scope of work, could also be affected by that water. And that might be more of a Conservation Commission question about the trees specifically. But I do feel like the development really had a negative impact on that bit of town land there. I think, one other thing is, and this is mostly based on my impression. My impression is that when trucks were removing soil from the area way back when, there was a certain amount of that. But it really caught my attention when the trucks were bringing in new fill, and that seemed to be much, much more than what had been taken out. And part of that could just be my impression because of the tamping that shook all our houses for days and days. So part of it could just be the way I experienced it. But on the plan that talks about the earthwork volume, it indicated that actually that it would be quite close and that there would actually be less volume when the project was done than there was to start with, if I'm reading that correctly. And so there was a note that that an actual better analysis would be done by the people who are building it. So what I was wondering if that can be checked and just make sure that all the information we have about the earthwork, the elevations, and all of that is double checked when we're looking at these drainage options and solutions. So some of that was questions, some of it was just getting things off my chest, but I really appreciate it all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's good input. Appreciate it. I guess Andrew or Gio, this went through conservation, right?
This did,
Yeah.
they've even looked at this remodification and noted that they approved this extent in the past and could administratively look at that again.
Okay, and I guess the reason why I was asking is, right, they are certainly tuned in more than we are on what plants and trees can live and can't in those particular locations. So I guess I'm trusting that that's something that they would or have looked at.
These trees towards the west are out of their jurisdiction, but I think we've also noted the standing water, and we'd have that conversation with both conservation and the tree warden and DPW and what will fit with the development team.
Sorry, for clarification, why would the 4 trees be out of their jurisdiction?
So the conservation buffer, the 100-foot buffer, is up here. To my knowledge, is not a buffer zone down here, but Gio, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are correct. The entire site was examined for wetlands, and the only wetlands that were found were in the northeast corner.
Oh,
up
I
there.
didn't mean because down the west side was wetlands, I meant because that's town land.
Right,
Okay.
right, still, yeah.
That would be the tree warden
Tree warden.
as opposed to conservation.
Yeah.
Welcome to the town bureaucracy.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Conservation Commission is going to hear an RDA about this project on Wednesday night, unless that's been rescheduled. So I think it's still on their radar.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the public, either online or in the room there?
Oh, I have a hand raised on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, my name is Kyung Yu. I live in 900 Main Street. We are just next to the lot 2 and lot 3. This is church, and then we sent our official letter to the CPDC last year because we experienced a flood in our parsonage every time there's filled with the water, the open basin. And just wondering, this change plan. So there's no open basin with this new plan. How's it gonna impact? I mean, not only us, but our next neighbors who experience flood every time. And also, I was worried about in the winter time if there is an open this basin is just had ice, the surface level. Then our children maybe it's just there's nothing, there's no fence there, so they just maybe want to walk over the top. That was our concern over the winter, and then it was filled every time it was big. I thought there were only 1 or 2 times it filled, but it's now filled very easily, and it overflows to the town wetland every time. So just wondering how this new plan will be impact to the water flow.
So the basin that was installed, it appears that the fill that was used to install it was not the correct fill as was called out in the previous plan. And I was concerned that they didn't fill it up with a porous material and that it was filled with more of like a silty material where the water would go and just sit, right? It wouldn't infiltrate. And as part of this new plan, the entire pond will be removed and it'll be dug down to the sea layer. The sea layer is a sandy layer of soil, and so all that extra material that was brought in, that silty material, it will be removed, and they should have a sandy soil on the sea layer and then backfilled with gravel and this underground stormwater system and this sandy material, and it'll be an underground system. So once the recharge system is completed, it'll be backfilled and it would be a lawn, and it will not be an open basin. So all the stormwater will be going to this underground system. It has a large storage capacity, so it will hold more volume than it would as the pond. So it will have a better infiltration system and infiltration rate because it won't be sitting with silty material. It'll be sitting with the natural sandy material. So it should work a lot better than the pond that's installed.
Thank you. Good. That helps.
Not seeing
All right,
any.
Andrew,
Yeah.
where are we, do you think?
So I think there's enough conversation to be had in the coming weeks that a continuance is warranted.
Andrew, just a moment.
Yeah.
Sir, did you want to make a comment? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
So that would be my recommendation, but up to the board. But we have room on the July 15th agenda as well.
I'll say yes, certainly, because I think a number of members of the board expressed that they wanted to get that, at a minimum, get the engineering department's review of this new plan. So, right, I think at a minimum, we'd be looking for that to happen.
Yeah.
And still continue.
So did you say July 15th? Is that not enough time?
That is what you said.
That was what their last one was to July 15th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
July 15th, yeah.
So I'll go ahead and move to continue the major modification to the definitive subdivision at Grandview Road Extension to July 15th.
Second?
All right, roll call vote, start with Tony,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
John, yes.
Thank you.
Alright, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Moving along,
Yeah.
yeah, do we want to, right, you have two things here on, planning updates besides the BTA communities, should we, is one of them quick, or,
So A&R is done, we did that early on while you were rebooting,
right,
that was done. Walnut Street plan endorsement, conditions for plan changes were just simply noting the vertical granite curb on what I'm gonna call plan south side of the right of way. We had gone through the discussion on bit curb or vertical. They noted the vertical granite curbing as conditioned up towards the rear lot. And they provided a spec on the retaining wall, so the plans are ready for endorsement. I have them here for signature. It'd be a simple motion to endorse, and then if I could then over the next week or two collect yours, John's, and Hillary's, at the next chance I see you would be great.
sure. So, with that primed up, right, we wanna, or any discussion on that,
Any questions? Yeah.
yeah,
If it is substantially same to what is already approved, I have no questions.
It's
all right. I don't have questions, if, right, we're looking for a motion to endorse,
yes.
Motion to endorse the plan for Walnut Street as amended with granite curbing?
I'll second.
all right, roll call vote, start with Tony,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
John, yes.
Great. Wrap those up. And yeah, okay.
On to MBTA communities.
So MBTA communities, okay. So in the packet was delivered, what was a template presentation. It's been a bit more fleshed out over the course of today and the weekend, but we have our upcoming forum on Wednesday, June 12th. I did post a Cpdc agenda if you see it. I wasn't sure how many of you were planning or could attend, but I posted it just in light that we had 3+ members there. So I think we've all been working towards since the new year where the public hearing closed and we elected to put down on paper some more conceptual ideas of what compliant zoning could look like in a number of areas. I think we all heard the feedback. Could the mixed residential find itself in anywhere outside of the half mile? Can we start looking more strongly at commercial zones, the industrial zone, business A, business B? We've run up to 10 models to find some elements of compliant zoning that would fit in MBTA communities. And now we're right in this forum looking to present a number of them that we have confidence in moving forward. So that ranges from the mixed residential that closed in January that is still on the table. In and around the half mile and abutting the downtown zone. We've looked at corridor-esque mixed residential or potential development that's not commercial areas to vet those out on paper and what that could look like. And then we've ran a fully compliant downtown zoning, what that would look like, as well as some combinations with business A, downtown, and the industrial. So we were electing to put up to 4 to 5 forward in this forum, not all 10 because that's cumbersome for the community and difficult represent in and of itself. Find those 4 or 5 options that most strongly relate to what we heard and where we're at in a number of different areas in town to start pushing forward. So hopefully the report was clear, and how they fit into the presentation is getting clearer. I think now what we're starting to wrap up is identifying what the feedback is on these number of concepts so that we can use it to either further improve them or start narrowing down the options even further from here. And that's our most important challenge after this forum, to start narrowing down that much further. So just happy to open it up to what you read and what you feel might fit in concepts to the presentation, how strongly industrial zones can and should be included going forward, South Main Street, others, areas of interest that maybe we didn't explore in some of these models that you wish we had.
I guess I'll start. I guess first off on your presentation, I have just a couple of comments that I'll send directly to you. Not worth the time here in this forum. So a couple of comments there, but I think that looks good. I do right, there's a lot in there, and you know, to the degree that getting that information out is important, but I think probably also moving through that rather quickly to the meat of the issue is always important.
Yes, that was the intent. I wanted to set the stage a little bit for those new to the conversation, and they can go back to this forum without going all the way back. But yeah, the intent is to get towards that meat and have a larger discussion on that.
But right, it will also be posted up so that even if you skim through it quickly, people can always go back and get that. I guess I really appreciate all the work that went in. It was, to me, very clear on what was looked at and sort of what the options are, or what sort of came out of the analysis, I should say. A couple of things, you know, as I look at the options there and how things sort of play out, and what the discussion was during our meetings, right? We had a number of different points that came up numerous, right, time and time again, right? So one was looking at a strategy to fit all the proposed new multifamily residential within one of our existing commercial districts, right? And there's some opportunities there, right? Based on what you said, what the consultant had done. But then another item that came up was looking to add affordable housing on top of what was proposed. And I guess that's really where I think it would be helpful to provide some additional context, right? Like everything that was developed to date really just looks at the sort of the existing parameters, and my assumption is that if we look at adding an affordable housing component to this, then the density in any of those would need to increase. You know, like for example, if we're talking about adding affordable housing in downtown, instead of 4 stories, or no, you already increased, I'm not looking at it right now, but you'd already increased it to
4 downtown.
To 4.
Yeah.
And so it would likely need to go to 5, because there's nowhere else to fit the density, right?
Yeah, so this is where in this conversation I was trying to get back to how we originally started and focus on form and location.
Yeah,
The affordable components, I think, right, they're naturally fitting to the mid-rise areas, which are in this case the commercial zones. So if we start to narrow those down, I can have the consultant run affordability analysis. I think both the consultant and I are confident between 10 to 15% in the commercial zones makes sense and will work out.
Okay.
But we didn't want to go too deep into that conversation because it can apply to so many different zones, and then we get into the 40B and SHI. So we wanted to get back to form and location before, in the next step, giving those further details on the affordabilities, maybe some of the more specific controls. Like in this one, we're not getting into setbacks and lot coverage. I was thinking density and height was appropriate for scale, but not the specific setbacks at this case, given the number of concepts, until we start narrowing them down to provide that further detail on 1, 2, maybe 3.
That's fair, and the only reason why I brought it up because that was one of the, I'm gonna say, key feedback points
Yeah.
that we had. That wasn't necessarily addressed in the information that you developed today.
Right.
And then just to confirm, right, the way I see it, right, there are some, even if we start, or if you start a mix and match thing, that there are some, whether it's the downtown business district or the smaller vision of the area surrounding the downtown business district, which you had shown before, one of the two of those need to be a component.
Mm-hmm. In all likelihood, yes, there would be some element of one or the other.
Okay. I mean, just because we need to fit within the
We need something.
40% within the.
Yeah,
the
we need something there. Yeah.
All right, that's it to start with.
Yeah, that's good feedback, and not to go on a tangent, but it is where it gets nuanced, right? If it's downtown, yes, maybe those allowances were higher, but we're allowed because it's an existing 40R to keep 20 to 25% affordability, versus like a business A, we'd be more closer to that 10, 12, 15% maximum affordabilities that I just didn't want to get too into the weeds of yet. And if, right, we hear that, no, we don't want to do South Main Street, no, we don't want to do downtown, no, we don't want to do X, Y, or Z. But yeah.
So including the 40R, does that buy us anything?
Just keeps your higher affordability rates.
Yes, but if we include the 40R, does that mean we can shrink the amount of outside 40R area that we have to include?
Yes, in essence.
And that would be the case for including any of the options outside of what is now being called the transitional residential town center. Like if we include an element from somewhere else, we reduce what's needed in changing single family zoning in the town center area to
Right.
right?
Yes, and we've discussed, and Olivia already pointed out, like, well, could we do the north portion of business A only in downtown and not use maybe that further southern portion, just more geography changes? It likely maybe means a slight increase in density and unit capacity allowances, but it shouldn't be too substantial if we find those paths.
So I have an overall question for Wednesday. Are you planning this to be primarily a presentation or discussion also?
I think my intent was to at not each individual concept, but more towards like, right, if there's 2 transitional residential concepts, let's discuss them as a whole and their forms and fit and what we've heard. I think we've heard a lot of that today, but same with the commercial zones, let's review review the options commercially and then discuss as a whole if we are to consider commercial zones, what makes the best sense and what combinations make the best sense. So it's more conversation based and identifying the feedback that will help us kind of push things forward to the next step. So the questions we ask, I think, will be important, and the feedback that we get in a positive manner to address it going forward will be helpful.
I think the questions you ask will be important too, and I guess that was my next question, is what are the discussion questions you think you might pose?
Yeah, we've been toying with some drafts. They mostly revolve around what characteristics of this development, right? I think in almost all cases we have some element of existing development pattern that's similar to what would be allowed in their zoning. So understanding what we like and dislike about those characteristics, whether that's South Main, downtown, or the transitional residential, so that we can actively find the zoning that would improve upon the strengths and the weaknesses that we hear to take forward, but then also understanding what, I don't want to say off limits, but what really does the town feel is not appropriate to use in this case. I think it's important because there are so many options for us to start to understand. We need to understand where should we not be looking further, if that makes sense.
It does. I don't know if you'll get a consistent answer
I
from
know,
everybody on
that's
that, which is
yeah.
so that's thinking through those discussion questions to get a feel for what the attendees think of. You have listed here the pros and cons and threats, and I would be really surprised, I'd be amazed, and it'd be delightful if there was consensus among the group to say, hey, this is the combination we like. And maybe the questions go toward what are the pros and cons that the presentation, your assessment may have missed, to start to get some of those reactions is one of my immediate thoughts. I'm thinking about how to ask questions so that you get feedback that we can do something with.
Yeah, and that's really what we're figuring out still. We have some good questions, but trying to make sure that what we hear is usable for going forward.
Can I make another overall suggestion? There are 34 slides here, and I have some comments also that I'll give you, I'll try to give you offline. Even if you can keep yourself to a minute per slide, it's a lot of slides, and you might want to think about reducing the volume of reducing and maybe summarizing the volume of information that we provided to people.
Hillary or Tony, do you?
Yeah, I'm thinking that the presentation, the analysis is really what you want to concentrate on. Go through the ones that don't meet first, and then say, okay, this is what you've got, and this is what you lose or gain in each of these options. Though some of these numbers seem weird, when you're discussing doing it all in downtown, you mentioned that it went from, I want to say, 35 up to 48 units per acre.
That was, so I had set the model to start at 35 to see how close we could get to full compliance there. Playing with other factors wasn't working out, so the consultant from my draft proposal of 35 units an acre had to increase it to that 55, I believe it was.
That's what confused me, because it's only 20
now, right?
now, so you're going from 20 to 50,
Right.
to 48 or 55.
Right.
In that, right, that 55 units an acre is, if I remember correctly, is fairly consistent with some of the approval, the buildings that have been approved.
It is. Actually, only 2 fall under 55, and that's Postmark and the Chronicle, so it shows that we would still be able to maintain some level of waiver discretion. But certainly, right, looking at each lot more specifically and what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, going back to Heather's question a little bit is, what do you optimally, no, I shouldn't put it that way, but I am. Optimally, what do you want to get at the end of this, at the end of this public meeting, or maybe I'll just phrase it, at a minimum, what do you want to get, or what do we need to get out of this meeting on Wednesday, and what can we do during this meeting tonight to help you prime up to what you need to refine your presentation for in order to get there.
Yeah. The minimum need is to clearly establish the immediate next steps. Like, that's the bare minimum. Like, where are we going from here? And, you know, that might be digesting what we hear in real time to establish what's going to be further modeled and analyzed. But that's the intent, to say, we've heard you tonight. What we're going to do is take feedback and either run some new models and slight changes to geography, or give you more specifics in terms of the controls for any specific geography that we heard may be more in favor than something else. So that way we can start building the next presentation and kind of identifying those steps. So I think the comments tonight in terms of what we are asking is the most helpful conversation if we want to stay on that path. I know they're hard to come up with now, but in terms of that specific type of feedback or actionable feedback, how to best capture it. We're not at this rate considering like a polling mechanism or any type of subsequent survey to address concepts, and understanding also that everybody in the forum is still a culmination of everything we've heard to date. So it's a lot.
John's
Thank
not
you.
done, but when he is, I'm gonna suggest something that might be a little bit radical. Go ahead, John.
So, you know, I'm sort of, you're right, thinking forward, and right, we've met with a lot of people, heard a lot of comments over the past couple of months, and I guess I could be fairly certain that that, you know, because we heard it at town meeting too, is anything that it focuses on the commercial district is positive, and keep it away from any existing residential district. And you know, and I've been thinking, you know, why aren't I on that bandwagon as well, right? And the reason why I'm not, right, is because my feeling is that we as a town have made some similar decisions over our 200 plus or however many years are in Reading, and we've ended up with, and we have paid the consequences for some of those decisions that really focused on pushing the problem away than trying to address the issues of the day. And right, it's really what I'm getting at is, you know, if we allow more and more and more housing downtown, then we're not going to have a downtown. And right, I think that, I guess the question is, in this forum, right, how do we, I guess, I'm fully admitting, right, that's my own personal bias and my own issue, professional, but my own personal observation of sort of where the steers are down when we make this decision. I guess in this forum, how does that come out, right? Am I in the minority? Is that other people's concerns? You know, is that an issue that needs to rise up as we think about these, or are we really, is the discussion, because I know it will, you know, focused around how can we do the least to, you know, my neighbor? Or me as a neighbor, right?
And I think that's where I've struggled a bit in terms of understanding what we're hearing from the community and putting those things on paper, but also in the professional recommendation and trying to address the issue at its core. I think is what the plan did originally, and still trying to maintain aspects of that going forward. But also, you know, understanding that there are right, there's got to be buy-in, and that's the most important piece at this rate, given the timeline and where we're at, and that's becoming the priority to get buy-in in any of the concepts. So, how to strengthen them and get that buy-in ultimately, hopefully, evolves in the process and understanding of how long of a process this is.
So there are some questions, like the one that you just asked, John, that could be asked, and the question is like in what format, because there are probably going to be a lot of people in the meeting, and not everybody's going to have you're not running it as like a workshop with breakout groups and all of that. So there are some questions like, you know, how important is it to avoid converting our entire business district to entirely residential? That's a stark point that in the whole narrative of options and choices doesn't always come through unless somebody asks it that way. And I'm wondering if you have the interest or capacity to, say, receive informal written comments with the week. It's not like a formal comment period, so you could say, here are the discussion questions. Have people will make their comments, and sometimes they'll be to the questions or not. But think about what you want to what we want to come away from this forum, and maybe get the kind of feedback that we want. And what about just asking those questions and giving people kind of ideally a week, there's no deadline really, to write in specific to those questions and see what people do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be helpful or not, but if there are certain types of comments that will be most helpful, we could just ask people to speak to those comments.
Yeah, my intent was to have an open comment period for about a week or so after to help further get new comment for those who might not have the chance to speak there. But yeah, I think, yes, it's a good point to just post the discussion questions.
Yeah.
Directly.
Yeah, so and say, and you can frame it, I've participated in comment periods like this, and it is really helpful when you say, you can comment on anything, but commenting on these particular questions will be particularly helpful and useful. We'll be able to do something with that.
John, as to your comment about whether you'd be in the minority or not, I will tell you that in town you probably are not in the minority, but at that meeting you will be in the minority. If you recall, when we started this, there was a contingent in town that was excited about it. They wanted to actually expand it. That's why we were in a position where we had more than were required by the state. And they recognized that we wanted to maintain a downtown, and that increasing the density around your downtown helps your downtown to survive. My fear is that what will happen is alternative C1, which is basically take your 40-hour district, ramp up your density, ramp up your height, and call it a day. I have a feeling that's what's going to be the consensus at, if not the Wednesday meeting, probably most of these meetings. It's easy to get people who don't like something to show up than it is to get people who do like something. If you really want the option to have some sort of actual missing middle, potential real growth, as opposed to just more big boxes of warehouse housing, you're going to have to give town meeting two options. Option A and option B. And basically, if you don't go for option A, you've got to go for option B.
That might be where we end up. I guess I'm a little bit skeptical that people, when really faced with a question and this fundamental understanding that converting our downtown district, our 40R district, to an MBTA communities compliant district, if I'm understanding correctly, it opens the door for it being entirely residential and losing our businesses. I don't know that I don't know that it's a given that the entire community or even the people at the meeting will say, yes, that's what we want. They may say that. We may want to ask another question about the commercial district. Would people be happy having Stop and Shop turn into a big, massive residential area? I can't remember if that would comply or not. Those are some of the choices that we ask. And I don't know that people would say that, but people might come into the meeting saying, yes, let's use 40R with maybe a concept that will stay mixed use. And that's not what we're talking about. So we need to be, out of all of these many slides, we need to be really crystal clear what each of these options really look like.
If the goal, I guess I'll say, the goal is to minimize impact to single family as much as possible, the downtown does naturally rise to the top. We talk Green Street through the middle of downtown is some existing residential, but other than that, it's the outskirts, right? Maybe towards Sanborn, Chapin, those tail ends. But if that is the overarching goal, then downtown does start to naturally rise to the top. But I don't know that that's the goal from some that we've heard, right? So,
And my guess is that a lot of people would not say, yeah, sure, let's take, all this opportunity for business development and turn it all into fully residential. But that's what we have the floor to find out.
Just a question, Andrew, and I know you're not gonna have the answer, but, if this, or the downtown, right, were approved through MBTA communities as a residential district, and I know it's hard from a architectural perspective, but could, say 30 Haven, as Humble Moose leaves, or right, and others leave, could they then claim the by right use of 100% residential and convert what started out as mixed use into residential, a fully residential? It's by right, so.
yeah, they probably could. You'd have to residential. They get no parking for the commercial exemption, so you'd have to factor that in. But in terms of allowances to a full residential conversion, there would certainly be elements of that they could pursue if they found it fitting for their building.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So right, it's not only it's not only a it won't get rebuilt because it was just constructed. There is a possibility for some of those buildings to get converted.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of this is right in veins of compliance for housing, but if and when we get to a bylaw proposal, certainly I think we would, if just using downtown as an example, find some avenues to incentivize mixed use. I don't know that 5 stories downtown makes sense and that would be on the table, but maybe higher density, we'd already be getting up there. So it's hard to envision what those incentives look like on paper at that rate, but you can explore those options for density bonuses and kind of.
Well, and I think one of the things that you just talked about was the parking. We already are, there is the parking issue that we've already had for downtown, and if you turn that into residential, the 1.5 parking spots per unit, how do you fit that in there?
Yeah, so it's just a lot of considerations.
Yeah.
At this rate, and that's the challenge in the short time period that we have left. So
And there's one other point that I think is really important to make somewhere like in the presentation or in the analysis, and it might be in there. So apologies if it's already in there. But I think there are a fair number of people who envision, even if we go to the current commercial industrial area, that could be mixed use. And if that is like a non-starter for MBTA communities, because, and I may be wrong here, so correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that you're really only allowed mixed use if it's to retain a village feel. I guess actually, even as I'm talking, this raises two questions, A, does that apply to our commercial and industrial area? Because I think some people are thinking, right, so that's an important thing to come across. And then it actually gets me back to the 40R, our current 40R area is, do we make a case that it should, is there a scenario that it stays mixed use and we can still comply with MBTA communities because we're retaining a village feel? Maybe that's the kind of input that we get back at the forum, but that's a question that's on my mind.
yeah, in that sense, like I think 40R, our 40R, downtown 40R could meet their standard of downtown village core, but then it's their metrics for mixed use that one is limited in capacity and two has other considerations that we would have to factor in, like certain parking requirements. And I think, right, we have no commercial parking right now, but if it's much lesser on residential end, is that a consideration in Reading, or would we rather try to incentivize it on our own than use their required mixed use bylaws? So we could take that further look if that starts to move forward. This is very helpful to start framing questions, actions.
I'm questioning if we have a hostage negotiator in town. Not that you
We'll
don't
make
do a
it through.
great job.
We'll be okay. It's gonna be a good conversation, and it's just there's just so much nuance to it and so much context that can get lost in any and every one of these, that it's hard to give this full story on every single concept in a presentation like this when they're all together, right?
And so are you gonna at least present or flash up the concepts that were I'm gonna say obviously not viable?
I was not planning to do so, but understanding that we have them on paper, right, it's inevitably gonna get asked, I know, so I've been toying with that, but
I think that maybe I'm gonna because it was helpful to me to see the spread of things that were looked at, and so I guess I'm envisioning, Andrew, a slide that has four little maps of the zones that were looked at that aren't really viable. So at least people get an understanding of the analysis that was done, and I don't think you need to necessarily go into depth on those, but helping to understand all the work that was done between our last meeting and in this meeting.
yeah.
I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I can do that. It's hard only in the vein that, right, most of what was non-compliant there was related to station area, which is what they deem in the half mile. And so there are elements of those that we could still pull and use outside of the half mile in any given scenario, but also without going too far into it, or we can, but we've been operating under a different half mile. I guess the state in their model, they're shifted to an arbitrary MBTA owned parcel way out, not way out west, but a little bit more west. You might have seen the half mile radius was different. We've got an approval for them to use our own half mile that we've been working towards. Their model isn't showing it at this rate. And it's just leading to some weird calculation of that station area. Like more of that industrial zone should be in the station area. So I've been trying to get them to pinpoint why when the half mile radius isn't updated. But it gets more back to staying into form and location.
So I realize now I have a fundamental question, and I have my screen up at the mixed residential corridor allowances on Salem Street, which are clearly outside the half mile radius. I thought that what we were going to look at is also a scenario where maybe we don't do 100% within the half mile radius because we don't have to do the half mile radius. So I guess I'm wondering, did I hear you say that the ones that don't comply, it's because they are outside of the half mile radius, or are there other reasons they couldn't be part of a combined scenario?
Mostly what we were trying to model was a fully compliant concept, right? Like looking at the industrial area and saying, can we use industrial alone for compliance in and of itself? And the numbers bear out, but what's not clearly shown in the report is the actual station area, given the state's model going to some outside MBTA parcel. We uniquely own the land around our train depot, I think, to a degree. But we were operating on the centroid of that track, and they have a different parcel.
But I guess on Heather's point, right, that like the Salem Street option that was run, like you knew before you even ran it that it was outside of the area.
Yeah, there were some that were certainly like intended to be outside the half mile radius and could be pulled into concepts partnered in the half mile.
So my understanding of the only reason for running that with some sub areas was to understand those sub areas and how that may work with a concept in conjunction with the concept that was within the half mile.
Right, so part one was what can fully comply, part two was, okay, if it's not, how can we pull, now that we know the unit capacity and density of those zones in different shapes, could they be partnered in with other geographies to help us reach compliance?
Yeah.
So, and this forum is about that part one, not the part two.
Right.
So this gets back, I guess, it gets back to this most previous question of, is it worth showing on a screen what concepts don't comply, and if that's, and maybe that's not worth it, because maybe that's deceptive, right? Because it's not to say that they don't comply in their entirety, but if we take something to the community and say, okay, North Main Street, it would be giving them wrong impression if we say, no, we can't use this at all, because part two is what's the combination we might use. I see the complication. Does that make sense, John? To your point?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Because it is I think some of this stuff is really useful to demonstrate to the community that you've been running these analyses in the work that you've been doing.
I guess what would the way that I am trying to wrap my head around this is what maybe would be helpful. Maybe you've already done it, or maybe that is what's in here. Is if we were to go down the road, which I guess my impression was we likely would, of matching something in the half mile with perhaps some of these sub areas outside of the half mile. I guess my question is, what parameters of those districts within the half mile could be changed or reduced, lessened, that would then match with something outside. And not to be veiled, right? Like for your minimum, mixed residential area, is there anything in that context, right, that could be reduced or lessened? And you know what I mean, like, could the setbacks be wider? Could we increase the non-buildable percentage?
Right. Yeah, I think you might have.
In couple, right? So that's a little bit less dense.
Yeah.
Right? And couple that with one of these sub areas that are outside of the half mile that you ran analysis on, or can you get to a point where we can lay that out?
Right. And you might have even seen pieces of that already. I think we were running the transitional residential at a 6,500 square foot lot minimum to try to up that a little bit from the 5,000. And that way, I think, sorry, I'm getting roundabout here, but yes, like, if we hear that maybe some downtown allowances is appropriate, maybe that 35 units per acre, but that doesn't get you your unit capacity, can you fill in the rest with the mixed residential at a lesser rate? Call it 15 units an acre, 18, or maybe playing with the controls at 22. Yes, and same for outside of the half mile too. If we said South Main or Salem Street or North Main or others, and how they can combine into a less dense requirement for the districts, yes, that's possible. They do not need to be congruent any longer, so we have some options.
But your intent for this meeting, right, was to answer some of those questions that came up before, right? Was, can we do it all in the downtown 40R district? Can we do it all in the industrial?
Right.
What does the minimum build really look like for the mixed residential? And what would those sort of North Main Street and South Main Street look like standing by themselves, right? That's what the analysis was to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so, right, you have another step in your mind, or at least I know I have another step in my mind, and I think that you have the same thing, is now to get some feedback on that, and then we can play this little mix and match game with some of those concepts that are outside the half mile, if that's what we get as a feedback as a desire.
So I think that's a really important thing to convey in this presentation.
Yes.
And before, you have lots of introduction that I think could be cut down a little bit. And then before you get into the presentation of your analysis, a slide or something that is like what this is and what comes next. Do that right up. So this is the look at which zones could comply all on their own, and you could even at the start and repeat it at the end that what comes next is taking community feedback on the pros, cons, threats of this, and then doing the subsequent analysis to see if there's a combination that gets us there based on that input. I think simply saying that at the beginning of the analysis and again at the end of the analysis will give you the best chance of people understanding what's going on.
Yeah, and that's really in essence what I meant by starting to cross items off the list, because it just gives me more creativity, I guess, to use what we hear in desirable areas more effectively in combination or as a whole. So
That's a change I made to the presentation.
And then also, right, when I was looking through this, right, I looked at the parameters that you set up in these different zones and immediately then tried to convert those to what does that mean? What kind of development is possible? What's an example building that we already have built in town? Because there are examples to all of these.
for sure.
What's an example that this would allow?
Yeah.
And I think being specific about that, right? Because there's only a couple of things that we're discussing here, right? Like this zoning would likely result in something that looks like, you know, whatever on South Street.
Yeah. Yep, I got all those contexts. I was updating.
Okay.
Should have uploaded
Okay.
the newest presentation for you guys late today,
All right.
but yes, have all those context images. Here's what you would expect at this level of density or development, and right, it's never apples to apples, but close, right? So
And is the second meeting, I'm looking at your last slide, the second meeting is more about how the bylaw takes shape, or is the second meeting about the combinations and the third meeting is about the bylaw parameters?
it will end up likely being more of the combinations, and here's what they're starting to shape into it, and probably even some degrees of the controls to expect in a bylaw. But then, yeah, the third would be more into here's how this whole bylaw is starting to take shape, here's the elements and language considerations and further asks in terms of, right, what does open space mean if we're looking in a certain area or landscape, and getting back to those kind of nitty-gritty questions.
That's good. So concisely on that last slide, you might want to say exactly that. So, you know, next meeting is this, in like a bullet, the combination and certain controls. And the last meeting will be about bylaw components. Give everybody kind of a roadmap for where we're going.
Yeah, that's the intent of the save to dates. I think it's a little too big.
Yeah, like, the presentation gives you
Yeah,
a chance
it's
to be a little bit more specific.
Yeah, so.
So I don't know if there's other board comments right now, right? And right, there are some people, I think, in the room there. I guess I'm looking to open it up. Right, we're not delving into detail here, right? Obviously, right? We have nothing to present here, but more about process and where we're headed. So.
Hi, Karen Herrick. Thank you. I saw on the agenda that you were gonna be talking in preparation for Wednesday, and the only disappointment I have is that I haven't seen any of the slides. It was really hard to follow along. Technically, I think documents discussed in a meeting are supposed to go in a packet, but anyway, will you be planning on putting another revision out on the MBTA Community's website prior to the Wednesday meeting so that people could take a look?
I could post the slides in advance.
I mean, just to make sure I didn't miss it because I was scouring I couldn't find it anywhere, so it's
yeah, it's still just
appreciate being here. It's just hard to, understand what you're looking at, not having seen the presentation. Thank you.
It'll be posted after as well. That was it.
No other comments in the room, John?
All right.
Alright, this was extremely helpful, so I can start wrapping my head around this and keep you guys updated before Wednesday, so and please, if you have some more feedback, feel free to email me and Olivia.
great. I mean, there's a lot, right?
It's a lot.
There's a lot. So,
All right, that was all I had tonight.
The only
okay.
other concern that people raised is a mechanism, if possible, for preventing merging of lots.
Yeah, I think it's just unclear legally how that can be orchestrated. How the state would look at that in compliance models. It's based on what exists today, but in certain concepts it might be more favorable than others. But I think if we were to go that route, you may consider maybe a maximum density or unit counts. I tend to shy away from those, right? Let the sites constrain themselves and the building footprint and layout and bedrooms and unit sizes constrain themselves, but you could explore that option if it's just can't impact density differences and unit capacity in the model, so it's just a tricky one.
Yeah, I tend to think that there's really some legal hurdles to put something like that. I mean, right, to tell people they can't buy their next door neighbor's, lot and build it as one, like that just doesn't, I've never heard that, right? I think that creates some big legal concerns, but and then the other piece that we did here and we talked through some, and I think it goes to we would do this in a later phase, but looking at what the impact is of any of these different development, the zoning changes and the development that would result from them, right?
Yeah.
Street widths, that kind of thing, right, was the discussion.
Yeah. Which is again why it's important to start narrowing the options that correspond to this too, right? Like the intent is, right, if we have some more key areas probably after the second forum, we can start looking at that propensity to develop, what's more likely than others, and what does that lot look like at a build out scenario and new growth scenario potentially. So trying to get the consultants geared up for that in advance without getting too far ahead, given each geography is unique to model that. But it is of consideration that yes, we need to put that out there as well, including affordability analysis if the zone makes sense for that, propensity to develop analysis, all of those further details in a specific area and concept that would come hopefully when we get to that specific concept or two.
Great. I guess we'll leave it at that, right? Unless anyone else has any thoughts or comments or suggestions.
Can't think of any questions
All
left
right.
to ask.
I'm not good at persuading people.
All right. Otherwise, thank you all.
Anything else we need to know about?
I do not believe so. Just that we've been pushing a lot of work out on social in terms of engagement for the many different projects we're doing, but there's a lot more coming down the pike. So, we should start to wrap our heads around that and kind of the priorities that we're working towards outside of MBTA, where the board has other priorities. If you guys have other thoughts on some of these projects, and especially as the planning projects start to wrap up towards the end of the calendar year, how we're using them effectively to implement action steps, that they recommend and find. So we'll get there, but this summer it's mostly MBTA.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Hillary,
All right,
John.
thank you.
Thank
Be in
you.
touch.